GAGE, wherever you may be today. It's Thursday, April 14th, and we have a big weekend ahead of us. The Moonbirds are going to be launching, and they're basically controlling the market right now. So let's get at it. Tyler, how's it going? Are you excited for this upcoming weekend?
Excited is an understatement. My hype levels are 10 out of 10 on the hype meter. This is our Super Bowl weekend / week in the NFT space. I'm ready for it. This is going to be a big one.
Yeah, so first we're gonna basically just talk a little macro on where we're at as far as it's crashed. As far as just macro stuff right now in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like the RChan is not pulling right now. So maybe I
I've
could
got
take
it
our
up, and
project linkings.
so I can at least talk to it, Lou. So basically, not a surprise, but we saw lower daily candles in volume every day this week. So last week we got above that $100 million a day threshold. We were talking about bull market. Well, it's gone down. So we've been about 79 million, 80 million or so per average, I'd say, per day over the past week, including a few days closer to 70. And right now, today's looking like the lowest day of the week. Again, we thought this was likely going to happen. Everyone's clearly has their ETH on the sidelines, ahead of this weekend.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of people that I've talked to are sort of making sure they have enough in case they hit that Moonbirds raffle. They have at least the 2.5 ETH for their wallet. But then I think there's other people that are thinking of it as I need to have at least, say, 10 liquid in case they don't hit. And then they're able to buy one on secondary if they're interested, or the chance to, depending on what prices come out as. So I think that's been a big indicator in the market right now. And yeah, I think besides that, like there are some other projects that have been somewhat holding strong, these imposters and the more. So what do you think about the projects that people are still buying up right now?
Yeah, so there's definitely been some products that had really strong weeks. And I kind of anticipated we'd see some project hot potato, ahead of the weekend, but I don't know necessarily that's exactly what played out here. So Imposters is top of the board here, 7,000 ETH traded on the week, a 3.4 ETH floor, up 66%. Hard to ignore. I mean, they're one of the highest performing projects of the past week, if not number one. It looks like it's up to 3.65. So this is the latest P2E game NFT product from LEO Trades. So big in the crypto Twitter space, huge number of followers. They've got a roadmap that is stock full of airdrops coming at different time intervals. I want to say 4 weeks and 6 weeks in, you get your first airdrops, and then staking starts soon if it hasn't started already.
Yeah, that's one thing I was gonna say is they just started the staking
Okay.
Right before we hopped on, and so you can now stake your blood or stake the NFTs to earn blood, the token, and you earn 100 as the base per day. But if you time lock your NFT, the longer you lock it, you get bonuses. So 100 is the base. If you have it up to 90 days of locked in the contract, then that's a bonus of 50%. I think the numbers were 15. It was something like 15, 30, 50% of a boost. So that'd be like 100, 115, 130, 150 per day.
Yeah, I think they were touting it as like gamified staking.
Yeah.
But definitely interesting. I don't really play a whole lot in the P2E space right now, just because of the timelines required to get really fully developed games and whatnot. And it's not really necessarily within my realm of expertise. But I mean, this was sitting around what 1.82 ETH pre-reveal, and
Mhm.
it's been pretty much up only. It's up almost 2x from there. And I think all anticipation is with staking started is just going to keep climbing, at least for the near future. So this is definitely one to keep watching.
Yeah, and it's also one that didn't have any sort of pullback on the initial mint. It was 0.69 in pre-sale, 0.96 in public, and I don't think it's been below 1 at all, in secondary. So, yeah, as you mentioned, after the public sale, it went from 1 to 2. Now it's basically gone 2 to over 3. Now it's at 3.5 to start the staking. So it does seem like once these are staked, it could just keep going up, especially since the people will be able to use those blood tokens in order to mint these now secondary. There's a UFO, I think, is the first one coming, and then there's like a pet. So you'll be able to use the blood that you've earned from staking in order to get the next thing, which will also earn blood. So that's sort of the P2E side of this one.
Yeah, there's a lot coming. I think we've got a question in the comments. Do we have any? This is a sad no for me. I had 3 of these pre-reveal and sold them all to get another monolith because I thought the monolith was going to reveal. It turns out I should have held. That was a bad trade in hindsight.
Yeah, and I had 3 to reveal, and then, since then, I don't have any currently because similar to what, I was talking about earlier, is I wanna have liquid ETH for the chance at the Moonbirds, and if I miss out on the Moonbirds, this is one, and I think we'll talk about this a little later on. This is one that I'd be looking at if you miss out on Moonbirds, because I think that time locking, depending on how many people stake these, you could see a real supply squeeze on it. So this is one that I'm monitoring right now as potentially, I don't want to call it a blue chip or anything, but I think it's one that has some staying power.
I'm with you. I think anything at the top of the trending board coming out of this raffle is going to have a shot to
Hmm.
to attract some liquidity. So this is definitely on the list. I think you're spot on.
Yeah, let's talk about the other one more from, I want to say it's Johan Cornella.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's correct or not. I heard someone else pronounce it that way, but yeah, what's your thought on this one? They had an interesting sale process. They have 5,555, but then they had a portion of them that were considered diamond hands where you weren't able to list them until they revealed.
Hmm.
So, what's your thoughts on this More collection?
So this is one that's just taken me totally by surprise. I do the daily updates. I see the trending products every day. This one's been at the top of the IC tools board every day, the Lucky Trader board, but I don't see anyone talking about it. Like I don't see it on Twitter anywhere. But every day the floor's up. It's up to what 1.7 today.
Mhm.
It was just at 1 ETH a few days back. So this is one that's definitely has been surprising to me. So I dug in a little bit on the owners and who makes up the primary owner pool for this set. Number one is the Zombie Club token project. They're the top overlap, but then it's CloneX, Beans, Mutant Apes, Artifact Monolith. So your typical, blue chip. So there's definitely a bit of overlap with some of the blue chip holders. Not a whole lot. The counts there like 150 to 170 or so owner overlap. So it feels like it's somewhat of a new cohort is my take on or interpretation of that owner data. So this is going to be another one that's interesting. It's been kind of totally off my radar.
Yeah, and, I'm not sure what the setup for, say, the allow list was for this one. Do you know if those were projects that were on it and that's how they got the initial supply? I see. I can't see the full breakdown because I don't have the pass, but they're considering it 27% on next blue chip probability because there's 1,000 of these are considered blue chip owners.
Mhm.
So yeah, it seems like there's a certain type of person that is buying and holding on to these right now.
It does seem that way. I'm new to the next blue chip rating, so I don't know if 27% is good or bad. Um,
Mm.
so I actually just got into the Conian game today, so I'm excited to play around with it more. I do like some of the stats and metrics they have. Um, so definitely gonna be one to follow.
Yeah, I guess I could check real quick if the difference that they have between, say, imposters. Let me see. So for those that haven't seen, this is Conan. This is one that I think we were planning on talking about anyway, but this is just as showing what it looks like. Um, and so they have this. Is it the next blue chip? And they're giving a lower percentage to imposters.
It's 19.5%. And I see it's Mutant Apes is the top at 190, then Beans, then Clonex. So similar blue chips, but much lower. So I think this also kind of cements that this is its own cohort. Like this is its own buyer pool
Hmm.
who is trading this. And that was kind of anecdotally what I thought was the case. So it's interesting to see when we've got new entrants or different pools from our traditional ones that we see in the NFT Twitter kind of echo chamber, who are pumping and driving projects. I think it's important to try to understand who those folks are, because crypto Twitter notoriously pumps and dumps, right? They buy, they move, then they move on, which is kind of the feel I've got on imposters. So I think that's the one risk that I'm seeing for that.
Yeah, it's sort of its own group of people that are buying and talking about it. But that's where something like the Conian, it's able to show you like these are the types of people that have bought into this. This is what else they've bought into. And you could potentially get ahead of the next one or get in early on. Maybe imposters had that 20% and maybe that's the threshold. And down the road, that's how you check out these new projects, something like this more. The fact that it's 27%, if that seems notable, then might be something to buy into. I don't have any of those. I know some people that were on the list and got into it. I think all the people that I knew that got into it are already out of it. But I think it all comes down to this Moonbirds thing where
Mhm.
people are just unsure about holding on to things that are in that 2 to 5 ETH range because, Moonbirds, depending on what the price settles at, is going to take a lot of the liquidity out of that sort of price range for people. So that's sort of
Sure.
my take on there. Is there anything else on this sort of market overview right now that you
Yeah,
want to talk about?
I think final point is I was impressed with how a few of the blue chips or top end PPs held up this week. So Azuki's like the volume is down 75% at 5,000 each, but the floor 26.5, holding fairly steady. It peaked at 34 in that peak mania weekend run. Then it slowly went down, but then earlier this week, it went down sub 20 for
Mhm.
a few hours and then got snatched back up. And it's back to 26.5, which feels like a more natural kind of resting spot for it. And then kind of similar story with the Mutant Apes and Bored Apes. With such a massive liquidity event coming this weekend, I would have expected those floors to potentially drop. And they really held firm or steady. Like Mutants are up on the week. They're sitting at 27. Now they're kind of going back and forth with Azuki for like kind of flipping who's ahead of the other. And then Bored Ape spent half the week in the low one teens. They're at 108 right now. So I think certainly some speculation on upcoming Yuga Land announcement there, holding those up. But I think if you're a holder of any of those three projects, you're calling this week a big win.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point as well, where some of the concern was, is this going to affect those more blue chip projects? There's a lot of takes that I've heard. Some are people that can afford to buy an Azuki right now, maybe they're not, but then they end up buying next week, or say they missed the Moonbirds announcement and now they're like, oh, well, I guess I can just buy another Azuki or something like that. So yeah, I think it's a good point. Um, those sort of blue chip projects have kind of just been flat for the most part, outside of like the top tier ones. So um, to me, there's still that gap in the like 5 to 15 range that hasn't really done much movement. The brokers are down back around in that 4.5 to 5 range. Last I checked as well. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of other news that could potentially be out there that pumps them, like Cooltopia for Cool Cats, which we might get a little more into. But one topic that we wanted to bring up today, a little before this Moonbirds thing, is, let me bring it up. But basically, we saw a pretty large buy from CryptoPunks. It was a zombie buy. It's for over 1,000 ETH, which some people would say, in this economy, but it's about normal, I guess, the price of it. I think if it was under 1,000, people might throw their hands up saying that, oh, it's too cheap or something. But I guess, I don't know what the wording would be, like an acceptable price for a zombie. I think the previous zombie buy was around 900 ETH. They're relatively illiquid, but it brought up a conversation because we don't really see a lot of 1,000 ETH buys in the Bored Apes, even though Bored Apes have basically double the floor of CryptoPunks right now. We're still seeing the high end investors choosing CryptoPunks. So, what's your sort of take on that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. This week kind of shined a spotlight on it. And to me, it's the difference between collectibles, high end collectibles, and your Veblen goods versus utility based projects. And I think the reason we haven't seen the Bored Ape Yacht Club high end sales is it's still primarily viewed as a utility project. And people have thrown around the Veblen term for them, and we've seen a little bit of that with celebrities getting into the game. But I think for the most part, the majority of Bored Ape Yacht Club buyers are there for the utility. And when you have an atmosphere or an environment like that, it drives people to the floor, right? And we've seen that with the mutant drop, with the dogs, mutants, and with the tokens, right? Like it didn't matter if you had a rare or a floor; you basically got the same level of utility, and that's kind of universal how all the projects have done it so far. Um, so until we see a PFP project really innovate and start to drive kind of tiered utility to mid tiers and rares, I think we're going to start to see more and more collapse to the floor. For most buying attention, for most mid tiers, there will still be somewhat of a high end, but I think it's going to be hard to ever really reach the punk levels for really any other
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, and I mean, you could see it right here. Some people would argue XYZ, but I think just data wise argument, there were 4 zombies listed for sale. There's 3 of these solid golds listed for sale, and the cheapest one is $9.99. So you could have, I mean, they chose the zombie over this 5383 Bored Ape that's gold. And this isn't the crazy eye gold that we saw go for a little less than that somewhat recently. But yeah, I mean, it's the type of thing where there's 46 gold apes. So
Mm-hmm.
there's less gold apes than there are zombies on CryptoPunks. But I think, to your point, it's the type of thing that the person buying the CryptoPunk is buying it more as a collectible, and buying a high-end rare Bored Ape, it didn't give you anything different in airdrops. It hasn't given you much different except aesthetics on things like the mutant apes as well. So I think that's sort of where people are going with this. But does it matter, do you think, that they're both now under Yuga Labs?
No, I don't know. That's a really good question. So like Cry.eth is the seller of that zombie punk. He's an OG. He bought that in 2020. I think he spent like $9,000 on it. So just an insane return uh, for him there. Um, I see a lot of chatter that kind of punks got ruined when Yuga acquired them. So I think there's a big, open question if punks will ever recover. I mean, 3 months ago, punks were the safest bet on the 3 to 5 year timeline for PFPs. Gun to my head, I still think that's probably the same case, but I'm less certain of it now than I was, and I think there's a lot more uncertainty around it in the market still.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't really too big of a topic, but I think this specific sale brought it up a little more than we've seen in the past
Right.
because, like, as of now, I think the market has basically decided that Bored Apes are a better buy than CryptoPunks in general, at least in the short term. Um, and it's just one of those things that it makes you think about, like, people still want those rare CryptoPunks and the history behind it. So I think that gives some confidence back to punks holders that the high end sales still going to the punks uh, could be something that comes up further if we see another one of these bigger sales. The next cheapest zombie was, I think, that showed 1,300 ETH. So still similar in the comparison. Would you choose this gold ape for 999 over that one? And personally, I'm not in the market for either of them, but I think there are people out there that you wonder if the person that bought that zombie had that decision, because I don't think that wasn't like the best looking zombie either, but they must have thought they were getting a little bit of a deal, getting it at the low 1,000 range.
Yeah, and I think that when you're making a purchase this big, you want to remove as much risk as you can. And Yuga Bored Ape still has a lot of execution risk. It's risen parabolically because of the utility that they've been able to provide, but there's a lot of risk of diminishing returns right now because they've given so much so fast. If they're not able to continue to meet market expectations, is the floor going to drop? And if the floor drops, is there really going to be demand on the high end for these rares? And punks have 5 years of history behind them now as well, and apes are still relatively new, still coming up on that 1 year anniversary. So I think that plays in.
Yeah, definitely. And so we're gonna switch gears a little bit here, kind of back to that Conan pass. And there's been somewhat of a little new meta going on right now where these membership passes, and it's becoming true utility. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the best way to word it, but we have the Conium pass, and then we have the pre-mint pass that we'll talk about as well. So I think a couple major things on here that I take away from these sort of membership access passes are there are less that get put up for sale because people are wanting to use them for the product. So tell us a little about the Conian, because I know you have one of these and have been using it a little bit.
Yeah, so getting the pass gives you full access to their tools. So they've got essentially the free version, and then they've got their premium version. Um, and with the premium version, you get a little bit more data, more metrics. They actually just launched a different tier of alerts that you're able to receive. And in fact, if you have multiple Conian passes, you get alerts faster than if you only have one, which was an interesting twist. I'll be curious if there's a little bit of pushback against that or not. But we're in this utility meta, but a lot of the chatter in the NFT space is, well, what is utility? Like, what products are actually giving utility? Well, this is actually utility. It's a tool that helps you monitor, helps you trade potentially better with access to better information that others may not have. So this is this is real utility that these teams are delivering. I think that's what's been driving all the attention to this, potentially headlined by Proof Collective, right, in their utility pass, getting all the way to 90 ETH. I think people might be kind of looking for the next one, but at the same time, people like the product, and it's similar to pre-mint. And I've been pretty impressed, wowed by the price action on pre-mint here as well.
Yeah, and this is one. There have been a couple of projects. There was this one, the other side that I had. They had a lot of issues on their end, but it was very similar where you basically staked it, and every Sunday you got either NFT, the token that they had, or one of these whitelist spots. And then with the tokens, they had like a store where you could buy NFTs after you've accumulated X amount. Um, but yeah, then the other one, as you just mentioned, that has been this has been kind of a wild ride a little more, is the premint. And this is now currently around that 1.2 ETH floor. It got up to just about 2 ETH. There were some sales up to 1.97 or so, I think was the actual top. But one of these nights earlier in the week, I want to say Tuesday maybe, um, it ran up from this about 1.2 all the way up to about 2 ETH. There were a few sweeps in there. It was late at night, so it kind of ran up. But people are using the tool itself. Like you can go on to your premint, um, the collector pass if you have it. I'm not connected on this account, but basically you would go in, you have your own dashboard. And for those that might not have seen this before, but they connect and collaborate with other projects to give out those allow list spots. And Premint basically does everything for you. It tells you which Discord to join, which, say, Twitter account to follow. And they also go through the selection process. They tell you there's a lot of cool stuff involved, that's potentially on their roadmap. But what's your thoughts on Premint? Because they've sort of become a new standard in a way
Mm-hmm.
on these teams. Oh, if you go through Premint, people look at you a lot less likely, let's say, to rug. Like it's more legit if you go through Premint first.
Yeah, they're legitimized. They seem to be the winner right now in this NFT like minting raffle, that type of a launch. The market sentiment seems to be pretty universally positive, and the utility you get as an owner is you get to find out if you might be eligible for additional whitelists that you didn't even know about. So there's that potential monetary gain there if those mints are a good return. And then they've started rolling out discounts to other products, so that they're definitely taking this seriously. The only potential backlash I see coming, and I like this, I like Premint a lot. I'm a fan. I think they've created a great product. Is if it starts to be looked upon negatively, that if you pay $5,000 at current floor, you get access to all these mints and whitelists that other people don't get, and it just becomes a pay to play narrative. And I could see potentially some pushback against that, especially if the floor rises on this one. So that's the only kind of negative sentiment on my radar for this one. But everyone who uses that I know is a pretty big fan. So I think this one's going to be around for a while.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I've been pretty bullish on, this Premint Pass. I have a few of them currently, and I have been using it. I think what's nice about it is you can go on your dashboard however many times a day, but you can just check it once a day, a couple times a day, whatever, and you just see new projects, and you can sort of decide still, like, oh, this doesn't look like one that I would even buy into, so you just don't enter it, or there's too many steps, you just don't enter it. But it takes a lot of the, I want to call it like fake legwork that some of these um, grinding previously was like, oh, you have to level up in Discord to level 10 or whatever. And this just breaks out. Here's what's needed. Here's how many spots there are available. Here's what date you have to do it by. Here's when they're going to mint. All the mint information's right there. And it just puts it all in one place for you. Now, as far as the pricing goes, I'm not sure what the correct pricing should be for it, but that all comes down to how many of these you hit. If you hit, say, there's one coming up, the MEMS, that had 1,000 spots. Like, say that comes out and is half ETH floor. You just made half of it back. Um, there was one, the Alien Friends Evolution, that sold out immediately today and was a floor above mint. So I think as long as they keep hitting these successful mints, people are going to still want to hold on to them long term. But there's obviously some upside that might be crushed because of that. Because at some point, people are going to say, "Oh, 5 ETH! Like, there's no way I can get 5 ETH back from this."
And then also, like, if you're from a project team perspective, do you want to launch into the same community that hundreds of other projects have too,
Mm.
right? Because now the 10,000 or the 7,700 pre-mint collectors pass owners are the ones controlling all the mints, right? So there's definitely some downside. We'll see how it kind of gets played out here.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to mention on this, well, I guess two other things. One is the people using it, wanting to use it, works for this one as well, because as of right now, you could sell the pass, but you're technically grandfathered in. It's a bug that they have, little alpha right there, but I think they're going to fix that soon. Um, However, there are ways to get on a lot of these pre-mints without having the pass.
Right.
So at some point, they're going to have to give a clear difference between pass holders and people that are just joining from public. Because right now, a lot of them, they just show what's available, and there's not as many just for pass holders as of right now. So they're going to have to add that, I think, long term. But it seems like every day there's one or two additional ones that have popped up for me. So for now, I like using it. I'm like to see what it brings. And obviously, Premint was connected to Moonbirds, doing theirs tomorrow raffle. So I think that's a good segment
Mm-hmm.
or segue into Moonbirds here. So Moonbirds, tomorrow is the day. We're going to find out if you got on the list. What's your thoughts here? Are you excited for this? Are you
Yeah, just incredibly
overwhelmed?
excited. And I've already run through so much game theory and strategy on what's going to happen. First, tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern is when we find out the raffle results, right? We think there's potentially 50,000 entrants. I don't know if we ever really got a total. There's going to be some really happy people and there's going to be some really disappointed people. And the first impact is I think there's going to be a lot of momentum with that ETH that's been sitting on the sidelines all week for those losers. That 2.5, if they potentially kept that in their wallets all week, there's a lot of opportunities on the board right now. And I think there's a lot of people who feel like they're going to be priced out if they don't get the 2.5 mint. And we'll talk through price predictions, in a bit down the line here. But people are calling for potentially double-digit entry points to this right off the gun. So if that's the case, for those whose budget is in the 2.5 to 5 ETH range, I think they're going to look to start spending it. And I think there's going to be some nice buying opportunities here Friday afternoon. And it could kick off what I'm calling for the biggest NFT weekend from revenue that in our history. I think we might see the total blow off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a few different ways that it could play out, and that's definitely one of the possibilities. I think this happening, it's going to be, is it exactly 24 hours before the mint? I
Yes.
think it'll be interesting to watch the market post this announcement, because there's going to be a lot of movement around of funds, to make sure people have enough to mint it. And then there's also going to be people that miss out, that just assume they can't get in, buy into other stuff. So if people miss out on getting this raffle, let's go with that sort of path first. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think happens to people that missed out on the raffle?
So many thoughts here. So first, we said this a little earlier on the show. I think the products that are at the top of the trending board, either on the week or on the day, have a great shot of attracting liquidity. So to me, that's Galverse Galverse has been the leader today, both from volume, like sales wise and revenue wise. So I think they're positioned really well. They've got a 6 p.m. reveal Friday evening, so that's perfect. The perfect shot for anyone who's interested in that project and just has 2.5 ETH freed up. So I think that one is a potential winner for us here. We talked about imposters, the ones who've been leading the week. I think they'll definitely see a bit of action. Everything else, it depends on announcements and reveals. And it's been so disappointing. We've got no news all week. All week, I posted on Monday my, potential likelihood of all these events to happen this week. So Cooltopia potentially launching, the Beans reveal, Monolith reveal, Doodles announcement, a Yuga Land announcement, and none of it really came to fruition, or it hasn't yet. So either these projects are kind of timing it for tomorrow afternoon once all this liquidity is freed up, or they're just waiting until after the Moonbirds dust is settled, which is probably means we're in for another, 4 to 7 days before they really come out.
So going off of that point, we actually have some breaking news right now.
Oh boy.
Out of the Cool Cats team.
Come on.
They are saying it's time. So it appears they're going to be opening this Cooltopia right now. Cooltopia now open as of, what is this? Within the last 15 minutes here. They've made it live. So I'm assuming that means Cool Pets are probably running right now.
They're running.
But
they're smashing.
Do you think now that this is announced, is Cool Pets going to be where people are going right now, more likely than the others, because a Cooltopia is now actually announced?
100%. And we called this on Monday's show. We said Cool Pets number one potential winner here is playing out. It was 1.5, 1.6 on Monday. These things are selling for 2.2 right now, and multiple per minute. They're flying off the shelves. We always knew the pets were primed to move when Cooltopia came out, but this is a potential perfect storm for them. And I think there might even be some people who are like getting ahead of the raffle unlock, so to speak, and are like, you know what? I've got low chance to win. I'm going to buy a pet now and just get out in front of this. Or maybe they're trying to flip into the 2.5. Who knows? But this is now top of the list, number one winner from all this, I think.
Yeah, I think it's kind of wild how quickly it. And I mean, we talked about this on Monday. It was just so clear, at least to me, it was just so clear that the second they announce this, it's going to run. It happens every time they've announced something connected to Cool Pets. It runs up to 2. It goes down to 1.5. It runs up to 2. We've just, half the reason I've held on to my pets is because it's just, why sell it low when the second it's going to come out, people are back in. And yeah, like you mentioned, people are buying this at 2.2 even now. And is this going to create a supply squeeze of people that want to now be using the pets? Because the way they announced it is once Cooltopia is back up and running, your milk gets set back to 0, but they're going to be earning twice as fast early on as a catch-up period. Not sure how much I enjoy that or not, because it's well, was there a reason they set the earnings to what they were early on? And now if it's running twice as fast, is that going to be bad for the coin or not? That could be a completely separate discussion. But yeah, this, at least in short term, CoolPet seems like the big winner right now of the week in the potential liquidity from Moonbirds.
A couple other thoughts. So if the pets run high enough, then Cool Cats will be cheap. So they're a secondary potential winner here. And, shout out to the Cool Cats team. I mean, this was the perfect time to launch this and to make this announcement. And I know they've been going through the beta testing, and they wanted to make sure everything was right this time, which is still very important, because if this game launches and it breaks again, it's going to be a massive sell-off, on that news. But it definitely shows some market awareness to launch in this 24-hour window, at least from my perspective. So hats off to them. Great call. And, they're clearly already seeing some of the benefits here
Yeah.
of the announcement.
Because I'd heard it was going to be Friday. A lot of people kept thinking it was going to be Friday, and maybe they just said, "Hey, if we're ready, let's put this out before. Let's get in people's heads before." Because I feel like Azuki's been very good on timing things on
Mhm.
when they're doing announcements in the past. So I guess now secondary is: do you think this is going to hurt the beans? Is this going to force the hand of some of these other projects? Do you think now Beans is going to hold off this weekend? Are they going to go with it this weekend? What's your thoughts now?
I don't think Beans is changing. I don't think the Azuki team is changing their plans based on Cool Cats. Um, I'd had this Friday pegged as a potential reveal date for the Beans, specifically tied to this Coachella uh, headline that their artist is tied into for the Korean group. I'm Red High, I think is their name. I'm blanking on it. But that
Epic
was
High, I
my
think.
Epic High. Um, that's their name. So my prediction was they're going to run the reveal against the Coachella set, which I think would be uh, really cool. It's tomorrow evening is going to be a perfect time for a reveal. It'll allow essentially 24 hours for now the Cooltopia narrative and announcement to kind of run its course, and 24 hours will be enough time, I think, for the people who want to get in there. And then Beans will be well positioned. And if that's a bullish reveal, I think we're going to run to double digits. That's my hot take on the Beans.
And that's separate from, do you think if they now, secondary, let's get back to Moonbirds.
Mm-hmm.
So if Cool Pets now running off news, if Beans reveals tomorrow, how much does that hurt Moonbirds? Because you're then choosing between a bean, which is a project connected to a big project that you already know some history about, versus Moonbirds that they're just connected to proof as of now.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that can happen in the next 2 days to hurt Moonbirds, really. Um, you might lose a few folks who are trying to think that they can get in on a Moonbird for like 5 to 6 ETH if they see the Beans reveal or an announcement that they're going to come reveal soon. Do they maybe switch those funds over and just kind of take the bird in the hand versus two in the bush, uh, or whatever that phrase is. So I could see a little bit of that, but no, I think the people who have been stocking up and kind of putting their ETH on the sidelines for Moonbirds aren't going to change here in the last minute, in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, I like that take. And I think, as we mentioned before, I think people in general were expecting all these things and have been putting money, holding it off on the sidelines for these. So if someone was planning on attacking the Beans reveal already, then that's not necessarily changing them. It's just when they're going to do it. And I think the instant reveal from Moonbirds is also something that's important to note. I think people are going to be able to target ones that they want, and the floor is going to be a little different setup. So what's your thoughts on this, the fact that those are going to be instant reveal? Do you think that's going to be better or worse as far as, say, just the floor in general?
That's a great question. It probably is worse for the floor, right? Because you would expect for an unrevealed set, the rare lotto has to be priced in to an unrevealed NFT. So if folks know that they've got a floor, that price should kind of naturally go down to whatever the floor for the set is. Um, I think right out of the gate, I don't think the general public is going to know much about what's rare and what's not. And I think a lot depends on how quickly the metadata is updated. But typically for these things, the metadata doesn't really work, or the percentages don't update properly until the full set is out. And this is going to be a gradual mint, most likely. So the The allow list minting opens up at 9 a.m. Pacific. It's a 3-hour window, right? I would expect a big influx kind of on the gun there at 9 a.m. Pacific. But, who knows when, they'll all trickle out there. So there's going to be a lot of guessing at what's rare and what's not. And it's going to be based on, looks for the most part. But Lou, if you're okay with this, we've got a little bit of rarity alpha we could share with the listeners
Yeah,
if
did you
you're
have
on board
a
here.
tweet from it, or you just
It's
had
not
heard
sweet. So I've
this?
got
Oh,
some friends in the Proof Collective, and so this is straight from some notes from Kevin Rose here this afternoon. But there are going to be 4 traits that have just 6 instances in the set. So that is going to be the highest in rarity. And it looks like the glitch owl, is going to be one of those 6.
and you're saying they're one of ones? There's 6 one of ones?
I don't know that they're one of ones, but like there's going to be 6 different glitch owls, for instance, and they might have other traits tied to them.
Oh, so it's like there's 6 of that type.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the next tier, there's going to be 2 buckets of 25s, and we know one of the 25 is going to be gold. So the golds are going to be a big magnet of attention. We don't know what the other 25 set is. And then there's going to be 2 sets of 150. And there's going to be 150 skeletons and then 150 unknowns. So that's the rarity alpha that we have so far. So you do that math in your head. It's about 380 or so there at the top end, which is, I think you and I were chatting a little bit before. It might be somewhat aligned to kind of the Doodles rarity there, that has, a nice upper end. There won't be one of ones, but sets of 6. There'll be some nice upper end tiers. So I haven't fully processed, pricing evaluations on each of those rarities. But what I can say is, if you see, they're going to be sniped, and they're going to be sniped fast.
Yeah, I think that's going to be something, if you're minting, important to, sort of check before you list, because say you have a gold and you list that for 5, or just say you list it whatever the floor is at the time, or whatever, make sure that when you click on and try to find your traits, or there's different ways to look that up within the metadata. So that also, depending on how quickly they reveal on OS, like I know there's a lot of people that use other tools. NFT Nerds is one that populates pretty quickly. We'll have them on Lucky Trader as well. But I think people still want to see it on OpenSea before they buy in some of these cases, listing. So if it's a lag to it, that could also, in a weird way, like bump the floor up. But I think the instant reveal, if there's more information on this breakdown, sort of what you had mentioned, I would assume the Moonbirds team is going to come out with some of that information. Then that's going to basically gear the market towards those specific ones. And if you don't have that, you'll see people dump them on the floor. What's your thought on how many, or how high of a percentage, let's say, of these will get listed during that first 24-hour period?
That's such a good
Like the
question.
peak percent, I guess.
So, the reality is, whenever you have an event this big, it attracts a lot of flippers and a lot of traders. So there are absolutely a huge percent that's coming into this with that mindset. This is one of the most plus Eve mints that we've ever had in the NFT space. On the other side, I think there's folks who might be on the lower end of the NFT, on the NFT spectrum with respect to like wallet balances, and 2.5 is a big sum to them and a majority of their liquidity or their portfolio. If those folks have a shot to turn 2.5 into 10 in the first hour or two, I think a lot of them are going to take it. So I think we'll see plenty of listing and secondary action here coming out of the raffle. what essentially is going to happen. I think the Moonbirds are going to be changing hands between raffle winners and whales, bots, and longer term collectors, I think is what we're going to happen. The question is, how fast is that transition going to take place? And that's going to dictate a lot of the price action we see.
Yeah, I think people will be quick to go and buy at 5. I think bots are probably getting set up for that if they see stuff at the 5 range. So that side of it, I think personally, I think it'll be hard to manually buy one sub like 7 or 8 as a human, not using a bot or one of
Yeah.
these other tools, unless you speed up the gas really high and get sort of lucky. You're following the listings page and just click it at the right time. But for the most part, like it's going to be hard to buy into these things, and I don't know if that's probably it. Usually comes with a lot of FUD when those things happen. So, obviously there's the risk of this not being a smooth launch, it getting delayed, things like that. But it seems like people are very frothy for this. So to me,
The
it's
froth
hard to
level.
see this completely fail.
Yeah, I don't think there's a scenario where it fails, not with the folks involved here and the level of demand that we've seen. I like your call on the 7 to 8 range. I think there's a chance we come out. So I feel like there's two scenarios. There's one where the early minters just set high price targets, like 15, which is kind of similar to how the Invisible Friends immediate post mint action went. And then the floor kind of steadily dropped from 15 down to 11. I think it got down to like 9 at one point when when
Yeah.
it got paused, and then it shot back.
Yeah, it was like between 9 and 12 that first day, I think was like the main range.
Yeah. So like in my head, that feels like a similar, likely scenario for some price targets here.
And it never fell below 5 Invisible Friends.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure to this day, I don't think the floor ever really fell below 5. So, I mean, I would guess this one also doesn't. It's a higher buy-in as well. So if you're spending 2.5 on this in general, like you're probably not listing it at 3 right away, especially just sentiment in general. So I don't know. We see it. We have a comment here that says, "I would not be surprised if this hits 20 ETH." Would you be? I would think I would.
I won't be, just because of the hype levels that we've seen for this. With that being said, I really want to come out this weekend with a Moonbird, at least one. If I don't win the raffle, I'm prepared to buy on the secondary. It's going to be hard to buy at 20. It's going to be really, really hard to buy at 20. And maybe we can kind of talk through the bear case, because there's been so little FUD or really negative news about this drop. I want to step out of the echo chamber a little bit. I was having a good debate discussion with a few friends in our Discord today. So if you kind of break down the proof utility provided so far, so the proof pass holders to date, through that Grails launch, the average owner seller got about 5 ETH of utility. And then now they're getting 2 Moonbirds. So whatever you want to set your equity target at for Moonbirds, let's just say 10 ETH for a round number. I think that's pretty fair. So now the proof owners are getting, about 20 additional ETH of utility, about 25. So for a 90 ETH buy, you're getting about, a 30% return here in ETH utility within about 4 months, which is
about the same as what the ape return was. That's when the token came out, right?
So it's definitely a really strong return. But then if you kind of take a look at the market caps and how like primary and secondary sets for like Bored Ape Yacht Club, for Azuki's, how those have kind of panned out. So there's only 1,000 proof. There's 10,000 of these. So right there you go from 90 ETH to 9. I actually think the proof pass is going to drop by 20 ETH on Saturday. So I'm kind of setting my proof target at 70 post Moonbirds. So divide that by 10, you're down to 7 ETH, and then apply some type of, typically the secondary market cap only goes to about 50%. right, of the primary. So there's a real case that the Moonbird should only be valued at like 3.5 to 4 ETH, kind of based on where proof is
Yeah.
and how early on all of this is. Um, and there's some real risks and unknowns with this nesting function. Primarily, what does it mean for the secondary market? If my owl has been nested for 2 months and I'm about to get this reward, you go to list your same owl, but the buyer can't get those rewards for another 2 to 3 months. Does that hurt the resale price of that? And we don't know, because it really hasn't been done before, and that's kind of the nature of the innovation they've done, and this new beast that they've created. But I think that is absolutely a potential risk. And then the other risk is, like, everyone's on the sidelines ready to buy this. Everyone tries to buy day one. What happens day two, day three?
Right.
Typically in other projects, the buy pressure grows over time. This feels like an instance where all the buy pressure is there day one, which could drive it to astronomical prices and valuations. There's going to be flippers in that mix, right? It happens in every project. If they buy for 15 or 20 and then can't sell it for 25 day two, do they start panicking? So I think there's definitely a chance that it peaks day one and then slow decline for several days thereafter.
Yeah, and I have a somewhat similar take to that, where, yeah, I think a lot of these don't look at the first day. We're sort of talking like the longer term where it settles at. So beans have basically settled at that about 5, and they're half the supply, or 2 times the supply as Azuki, but they're not half the price of Azuki. Um, cool pets have been sitting around a fourth to a fifth, and they're supposed to be earning its higher percentage than that. And I just feel like these secondary versions in the like ecosystem expansions of projects, they generally haven't been at an exact difference off of the original one. So this is 10 times the supply. What comes with that is 10 times the demand of people. And right now, the proof is at 93% owners to, so there's 930 owners. And you're not going to see 93% of people holding just one of the Moonbirds. As you mentioned, when there is like clear EV in the market, a lot of flippers will come out. And with that, it's kind of, I don't know, I don't want to call it an issue, but that does bring the selling pressure, and that brings the upside of the floor down. So I wouldn't be surprised if it levels out below 10 ETH. I think I'd be more surprised if it leveled out at 20 ETH than say 5. But I do think in the early hours, people are going to be trying to find the rare stuff. Personally, I plan on winning the raffle, and humbly, I'm only going to get a skeleton. Like, I'm not going to get one of the golds. I know that, but I'm probably just going to get one of the skellies. Sell that for 50 ETH, and then buy a couple floor ones. So that's sort of my plan. I don't know what's your plan on this Moonbirds after basically what we've already talked about.
Man, I think if there's an instance to use your one time, it's this mint. And man, baby, I want to mint that gold. And I think a gold sells for 100 ETH.
Yeah, I was gonna say
one.
The top sale is the first 24 hours. 100.
No, I think 100 for gold, and I think one of the sets of 6 sells for 200. 200 plus is my target for day one.
Yeah, I mean the top. I guess it was a little different with the Invisible Friends. I know, but that gold that they did, the 1 of 1, sold for over that. So
right,
it wouldn't surprise me if there was a 200 sale. There have been a couple of these 200 plus sales on Azukis at this point, but that sort of goes back to what we were saying earlier in the show. Like, there aren't that many 200 ETH Bored Ape sales. And Bored Ape is, at this point, it's almost a year that it's been around. It's way more established than all these other projects. So why are people going to buy a one of one for 200 when you could get one of these Bored Apes? You could get 2 Bored Apes for that price, you know? So that's
Because
the
yeah, I
upside.
mean they're betting on the bull case here. They're either betting that they're going to be able to trade that for more down the
Mhm.
road, or that the utility there uh, will be worth it. Um, and a couple thoughts. So it seems clear that this market is becoming more and more efficient. Like we saw it with the Azuki drop. Like on the Azuki reveal, it was 2.5. It briefly dipped, and then it feels like it shot to 10 within just a handful of days, right? And then that became the natural floor, and it kind of sat there, went up and down a bit for a while ahead of the next kind of leveling up moment. I feel like we're going to see potentially a week of price action happen in 24 hours. And we're going to find whatever that natural floor price is here, um, pretty quickly over the weekend, um, which potentially is going to price some people out. Um, which is why I think we'll also see potentially a decent amount of FOMO buying. Like if you've got 20 ETH and you really want to walk away from this weekend with one Moonbird, maybe you just have to fire, right? And just be aware that, hey, in the short term, this may not have been the optimal buy. And, we saw that with Proof, right? Like
Yeah.
30%, 30 or 40% bought at 5 ETH in that Dutch auction on the gun before it then went down to the min price of 1 ETH. Do you think those 5 ETH buyers are upset right now? I don't think so, right? Like, of course you wish you got a cheaper entry, but the thing's worth 90 ETH right now. So I see a lot of folks with that similar mindset headed into the weekend, and
Yeah.
there's going to be folks who just don't care what they pay.
Yeah, and, I would say that that this is somewhat in line with how the Doodles did theirs, the breaking out into sort of tiers, in that sense. And we saw a bunch of people go after the alien Doodles when Doodles were, I don't know, under 5 ETH, I think still, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think they were under 5 ETH, and there was basically a sweep of the alien doodles that all at like 50 ETH. You had like Nate, Alex, Carlini, Prinksy, like that whole crew kind of went in on the aliens, and then they pretty much all sold them for over 100. So, um, there is the upside in some of these that we have seen, where if you are buying that upper tier, but outside of the ones that we've outlined, we have seen in the past that almost mid tier almost doesn't matter in a lot of these cases. So that's somewhat concern, I'd say, if you're buying something outside of those tiers that we've already outlined, something that's like, oh, I got the 1200 rarity. It's always funny when people say stuff like that to me. I almost think anything outside of the top 10%, just like it's all the same in a lot of ways. You're just buying off of aesthetics. So, I mean, if you have a less rare one, but it's like a cool fire one, then that could be good. But you're going off of aesthetics, I think, at that point.
I think you're right, and I think that's absolutely the right rule and model to approach most PFP projects. But I will say the X factor here is Kevin Rose, and how innovative they get with this. If there is a team that I had to bet on right now who would reward the mid tier rarity NFT owners over the floor, potentially less than the rares, it's Kevin Rose and this
Yeah.
team. And it kind of goes back to the bull case, which we haven't clearly outlined. Plenty of people have, but basically, this is one of the most proven teams in the NFT space with real world experience. Kevin's launched
Big following.
multiple successful companies. They're one of the biggest followings. I think he's absolutely bringing liquidity and funds from outside of the standard NFT buying community. Flamingo DAO is going to build a huge position in this. I'm sure he's got, in real IRL contacts who are going to come in big on this one as well. And he's kind of come out and said he wants to compete with the best PFP projects. Like this feels like a serious initiative for him. This isn't just Kevin Rose coming in to launch a PFP project as a cash grab and move on. It feels like he wants to win.
Yeah.
That's the take I've gotten from the podcasts I've listened, and that's a big deal. And everyone I've heard, everyone who listens to him talk about this, comes away excited. Um, so that coupled with the innovation they've already highlighted, the access to Project High Rise, which we don't know much about, but speculation it'll be one of the top metaverse projects out there when it's ready. I mean, it's a pretty strong bull case.
Yeah. I think personally, it he's bringing in a different user base than a lot of
Mm-hmm.
these other projects. He's bringing in people from traditional finance as well, or these higher end investors that aren't grinding the low mints, some of these other mints that we've talked about in general. Um, this is something that people outside who only say people that only were buying the Cosmics on Top Shot. That's the type of buyer that is also they've heard of Kevin Rose. They can like connect the dots a little. So I think that's another reason to be bullish on this is there's a lot of people that listen to his podcast. There's a lot of people that are connected that are big Kevin Rose fans and didn't buy in earlier and now they're not that surprised that it hit 90th floor. So I think that's the part that you can be pretty bullish on.
Yeah, I think tied to that, and one narrative that I haven't seen people run with yet is this specific community that's going to form and how strong and powerful it can be. So, there's been so much discussion around utility in the PFP space this week on NFT Twitter. And the reality is, one of the strongest utilities of these projects is the community that forms. I think there's a handful of really strong communities already existing, and more are forming. But this one has the potential to be one of the strongest, most elite NFT token gated communities in this space. And my prediction is it will become likely the most elite
Like
community in the
membership.
NFT space. And when you think about country clubs, these are digital country clubs. That is a use case of NFTs and one of the most important and highest utility use cases. And I think that's another big bull case factor for this drop.
Yeah. He been saying that he has more anxiety now. Thanks, team.
I'm
Casper's agreeing. And sorry, we're not meaning it that way, but yes, I think there's going to be some heavy FOMO on this one. It'll be one to watch, potentially clear out your Saturday and just kind of watch it. And it's one of those. Maybe there'll be some metaverse parties out there. Yeah, and it. They're saying like if you don't if you don't win the raffle, then maybe you'll feel bad and you're missing out. But at the end of the day, it's this is sort of the best way they could have went about doing it, and it's a lot fairer than the other ways. People that are already connected and within the proof feel like they're getting their money's worth by getting two of these. A lot of I people are saying they're all going to diamond hand. I think a lot of people are going to hold one, sell one, because you're not selling the pass. So why aren't you selling the pass for opportunities like this to be getting those sort of dividends back?
right.
So excited to see what happens. Good luck out there tomorrow. Hopefully, 24 hours from now, people will be pretty excited. We'll watch a lot of this stuff sort of unfolding. And then, yeah, we'll be back on Monday, hopefully with some good news. Hopefully there's people that we know in our community that have found or ended up with some of these pretty high end in those top tiers of the Moonbirds. So hopefully we'll be back Monday with some good news, and maybe the rest of the market will follow. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone who is here on here. He's saying emergency reveal live stream on Saturday. Who knows? Maybe depending on what goes on with it, that could be something that maybe we do even like a Twitter Spaces or something like that, or hop into another one. But yeah,
Pretty fun.
we'll be back, and we are working on some other fun projects that we have talked about on this stream actually about getting them on shows, and hopefully this sort of new meta of these passes we'll be able to connect with some of those groups to get them on and see like you know I don't expect us being able to get someone like Kevin Rose, at least not currently, with like just how busy he is with Proof Collective and the Moonbird stuff. But yeah, we're looking into some Solana projects since Solana now on OpenSea. So yeah, we got a lot of good stuff coming, and good luck out there tomorrow, and we'll see you guys on Monday.
Good luck.